3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Everybody, welcome back to another week of the Let's Get Podcast. I'm your host, Chef Rich Rosendale. And this week, we are joined, along with my co-host, Christopher Rieloff, we are joined with Christopher Galarza, who is an expert in sustainability and particularly the electrification of kitchens. You've seen over the last several years, there's been tons of different energy initiatives across all sorts of industries. Well, restaurants are getting ready to go through that revolution as well. So we're getting ready to talk with him. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, let's dig in with Christopher Galarza. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Dig In podcast. I am your host, Chef Rich Rosendale, joined by our co-host, Christopher Rieloff. And this week, we are going to take a deep dive into the electrification of kitchens. I have a good friend back from the Pennsylvania days from when I was at Westmoreland County Community College, I don't know, maybe it's probably just a couple of years ago that we had the opportunity to talk at an event and have Chef Christopher Galarza here. And he is an expert in design and sustainability of kitchens, particularly with electrification. He's reached out to me a few times with quite compelling points of why we should be talking about this important I wouldn't even say it's really a trend. It's really something that is kind of happening, and a lot of chefs across the country really don't know much about it. But Chris, if you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your company and the whole electrification concept.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Chef Chris Galarza. I am the founder and culinary sustainable consultant for Forward Dining Solutions. I essentially help organizations, chefs, restaurateurs find a way forward and out of gas cooking into electric cooking. So I help, I'm also working with groups on policy and things like that. But primarily right now, I'm focused on literally writing the book on electrification and decarbonization.
And where are you based at, Chris? And how did you get started into electrification? Again, a lot of chefs really, they think they go to design kitchens. Everybody kind of just goes directly toward gas because that's what everybody grew up in.
Right.
If you can maybe kind of take us back about how you even kind of got onto this whole trajectory with the topic.
Right. Yeah. So I got into this totally by accident. Right. So I got hired on to Chatham Eaton Hall, which is they were constructing the world's first fully self-sustained university campus. And in that campus, I was helping them develop an electric kitchen. It's one of the things that they wanted to do, so I helped them do that. And I was hesitant, like most chefs. I've always known gas cooking, so dove deep into it and started playing around with the equipment and found that I loved it. One of the things that got me started into opening my own company is in 2018, Microsoft reached out to get my perspective on induction cooking, how it works. Is it really worth it? So I gave them my own, honest opinion, and they, said their thank yous, and that was it. A couple months after that, I had an engineer reach out. Thankful that I spoke with Microsoft because he's been trying to get them on board to do electrification for 3 years, and 1 hour conversation with me, and they decided to go full into it. So he asked if I would consult for other projects. I said, of course. And that's how this all started. So it was serendipitous, really. And I couldn't be thankful. Like, I thought consulting, kitchen design work, things like that was something you do when you retire. And now I'm, 31 and, one of the leaders of this movement, one of the experts, one of the leading experts in the country. So it's pretty incredible.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I mean, certainly to be able to be working with Microsoft. I mean, that's not somebody that most people really have the opportunity to collaborate with, but that kind of gives you, I guess, some perspective into where these big companies that are already very forward thinking, that are already kind of much further ahead down the runway of their thought process than really most of our industry really is. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, Microsoft is, they're affiliated with computers, and they're, thinking more cutting edge about the design of kitchens than most chefs would. Right. But let me ask you this. first of all, I'm sure there's like a bunch of naysayers out there. There's a lot of people out there that are like, oh man, I'm in the process right now of we're doing a kitchen renovation at our house. And I have been like, one of the hardest decisions I've been trying to make is whether or not to put in the traditional gas cooking suite, or I've been really kind of going back and forth. I was like, well, I really have this outstanding Miele induction unit, and I'm really kind of leaning toward putting that in. But, the designers are all like, really? You're a chef. This is like one of the nicest kitchens we're doing. And this, and you're not going to go with gas. It's like, what's wrong?
Right.
So what can you say to a lot of the naysayers out there?
I would say, speaking directly to you, you're playing around with the idea of putting this into your house. I would say that it's incredibly important that you do that, not just because, it's my business model or it's something that I'm passionate about, because, I know you're a father and I know that the health of your children matters. So when we're talking about induction cooking, we're not just talking about a new way of cooking. We're talking about a healthier way of cooking. We're talking about removing the byproducts of burning gas like carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, sulfide dioxide, other particulates that lead to increased childhood rates of asthma and things like that. And, in the professional world, we're also talking about the fact that we sometimes have pregnant chefs on the line. We sometimes have elderly. And now we have to include those who are survivors of COVID-19 who have severely diminished lung capacity. So what are we doing to them? We're filling our environments with harmful toxic byproducts. So I would say, do the research, talk to those who know, because there's a lot of benefits to cooking with induction, other than the fact that like it's incredibly fast, incredibly efficient, and will just make your life a lot better.
I know that one of the things that you sent me that was really pretty interesting, and this is one of the things I shared with Christopher, and also too, I wanted to point out, we don't have Rachel on the show today because she's actually in Italy. So,
wow. Good for her.
Good excuse to miss this show, and she's having a great time, but she sends her regards, and definitely, she'll be with us in future shows. But
awesome.
Anyway, one of the things that when I was talking about getting you on the show, one of the links that you had sent me in some of our dialogue, which really kind of captivated my interest, was that in California, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall like when I was reading one of the articles, it said something like there's like 30 counties that have banned gas hookups. I don't know if that's new gas hookups or what have you, but which means that this is really something that a lot of people may not realize is already kind of like in the works. And a lot of things kind of happen on the West Coast and kind of eventually make their way across the country. But is that accurate?
Yeah, so there's 30 cities in the country, most of them on the West Coast, that have converted to going, all electric, which means new gas hookups are banned. For instance, San Francisco, one of the biggest, I think goes into effect either this month or next year in June. I gotta check on that, but I'm pretty sure it went into effect June 1st. And what that means is that they're making the conscious effort to create a healthier environment. And this didn't just come from the fact that like they're like, oh, we're a progressive state, we should do this. It came from actual scientific data, which showed that despite the fact that California is viewed as one of the bastions of sustainability, one of the leaders, in fact, they had the worst air quality year after year after year, and that's through no fault of their own. That's from these wildfires that keep happening due to the effects of climate change. Things are getting hotter and they're having more wildfires. So you can't control what's happening outside, but you can control what's happening inside. So they're trying to create better living conditions for their residents by getting rid of these harmful gas.
Is there really, like, as far as the performance of the gas cooking versus electric cooking? I know like using induction cookers, they work really terrifically well. But I think a lot of people, like whenever they think of like electric cookers or a range, like I was telling some family members, and I think they were kind of picturing like the old, coil. I was like, no, this is induction. This is completely different. But can you explain any of the different equipment that's out there, or for people that maybe just don't have no idea what induction even is? What are some of the benefits of this equipment versus like gas burning?
Right. So to quickly explain what induction is essentially the utilization of electromagnetism to create a cooking environment where the pan itself becomes a heating element, which means there's no thermal sources on the actual range itself, which means there's no ability to burn food onto the surface or anything like that. And in doing so, you create a much quicker and cooler. So you're able to cook a lot faster and your kitchen's a lot cooler for it. The quickest way to understand how it works is think of it like a microwave. You're using these tiny little waves to oscillate water molecules in the food at a high rate of speed to create heat from the inside out. So what we're doing is we're using electromagnetism to oscillate the magnetic molecules in the pan to heat the pan itself. So the benefits of cooking with induction is that think of your top of the line gas range. You can cook 38.6 pounds of food per hour. When you're using an induction range, you can cook 70.9 pounds of food per hour. That's if all conditions are exactly the same. So you're almost doubling your throughput. You're now reducing the amount of time that you're cooking. You're now no longer needing to buy these harmful chemicals because you can just clean the surface with hot soapy water. So now your staff is able to focus more on cooking, more on production, and less on cleaning, and you're able to get more out of them, which in theory can increase profit if you have the demand for the food that you're producing.
I love everything about sustainability, and I love everything about electric products. But my main question is, most of the time, I'm a big fan of Tesla. And for example, I know that at the beginning, all the cars, they came out like super expensive. Mm-hmm. Right now, the company Tesla, they're trying to release a new car that is going to be way cheaper, that is going to be around $25,000, and
that's awesome.
Probably around those prices. It's going to be, of course, like a hatchback car and stuff like that. So my question is going to, how much is the investment? For example, if I want to become like either in my house or in my restaurant, how much is an average investment if I have to go from gas to 100% electric kitchen?
Right.
And another one is going to be, for example, I'm in Florida, I'm in Miami. We are in hurricane season right now from June to November, but it's a big portion of the year. So it's a big chunk. So how can we deal in the case of electricity outage and stuff like that? So how do you manage those kind of situations?
Right. So first and foremost, Tesla's awesome. So keep supporting Tesla. So to touch on Miami first, most houses in Florida, almost I would say all of them, use electric cooking. So, that's inevitability. All I'm saying is you can get a better piece of equipment there. For restaurants, I would say, because I used to live in Florida as well, that it doesn't matter whether you're on gas and electric. If power goes out, it's illegal to keep cooking. So you shouldn't be cooking anyway if the power goes out. So that's a non-factor right there. So, I would say hurricane season or not, it's the best thing for your kitchen to be able to, especially in Florida, as hot as that place gets, to be able to offer a more comfortable environment. Last episode that I listened to, you guys were talking about, what can employers offer to their future employees? What's going to get them to come in? And if you say, yeah, we're in Florida, but our kitchen's actually super comfortable. Because in my own kitchen, when the outside temperature, and I have data I can share with you guys, when the outside temperature was in the mid to high 80s, my kitchen in the middle of service was 72 degrees, never went beyond 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a much more comfortable environment. Wow. Yeah. So as far now to touch on cost, that is a case-by-case basis. It all depends on what the retrofit hurdle is for your specific location. So if you have, say, the amount of energy needed to provide for your kitchen, it shouldn't be that much. If you have to completely upgrade your electrical services, that's when you could run into cost. But it also depends on state to state. So I know if you're in California, they will not only give you a tax deduction, they will also give you money towards these changes. They'll even go in some places buy back your old equipment, which helps offset a lot of the cost. So look at your local, what's being offered locally. There's a lot of places, even in Pennsylvania, will give you tax credits, tax incentives to help purchase greener products. So, there's not really like a perfect number. It's just, it's case by case.
Right.
But I will also say that this technology isn't new. Europe's been using induction for nearly 30 years. And my fear is that in America, we're doing a disservice to our culinary students, to our young culinarians who are coming into the industry that have no real understanding of what these technologies are. And I actually sit on an advisory board, and when I speak to these students, I say, what do you want to do? They say, oh, I want to go to France. I want to work at this three Michelin star restaurant. I want to do this. I want to do that. But you and I both know as chefs that if someone comes into our kitchen and we have 2 resumes and one doesn't even know how to work the equipment, I'm not even going to look at that resume. So how are we going to set up American chefs to be able to compete with our brothers and sisters overseas? And to level the playing field, we have to be able to convert and be flexible and work on electric kitchens. Chef Rosendale, he knows that if you compete internationally, it's all electric. So
that's right.
Now, as an American competitor, you're now behind the starting line. You have a lot more to overcome to compete at that level when other chefs from around the world don't.
I think those are all great points. And actually, I recall very vividly in being in a lot of other countries whenever we were doing, especially the Culinary Olympics. I remember being in Germany, and I was fascinated that we were working in this hospital that at 5:00, the culinary staff there, they left. We were working in there using the kitchen, getting ready for the competition. And at 5:00, the entire staff left. And what was left were these little like robots, these little pads that literally would like speak German to you. And we thought this was hilarious because we would like stand right in the middle of the aisle and they would say something to you in German. And we would, basically tell us to get out of the way. But these little robots, they would go through the doors, they would pick up the food, and they would drop this off to all the different patients' rooms. And oh my God, this is like, I don't know, 2004 or 2002. I don't even remember when it was. It was a long time ago.
Years ago.
And, I do agree that, a lot of the other countries have been very far ahead as far as embracing electric. And I think that's one of the reasons that when I was talking with you and you reached out about the episode is I felt like this is very, very relevant. And we thought this was a topic that really should be a part of our show because we really think really hard about like what we want to feature every week. And even at Roots, at our restaurant there, we have geothermal cooling with the floors. We have solar panels. We have natural light. We are launching a new soap, all natural beef tallow soap that's made from basically brisket fat, beef fat. So a lot of these things that you're saying, I really feel like a lot of people that are maybe designing kitchens now, they really need to reconsider the game plan and not just go in with, the usual pieces and the usual layout. I mean, how can you create a kitchen that is more productive, that is more efficient? And I love the fact that, that's another reason we love doing these shows is we learn so much in this process too, is basically just the safety aspect of it. I mean, to basically kind of say, hey, we want our team and your family to be in a safer kitchen. And I know, trust me, I'm a little bit on 2 different paths because though I'm very much forward with sustainability and our efficiencies, I also have like a great big, Dodge Ram, which I love driving around. And I wanted to get a Cybertruck, but the reason I brought that up is that Ford, as of the filming of today, the filming of this show, I know their stock has like sharply spiked because I think they're announcing like maybe 40% of their fleet is going to be electrification. They have like a new F-150 that's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be 100% electric or if it's going to be kind of a hybrid, but they're a very big brand that is now kind of even shifting toward this. And I know there's still a big push with self-driving cars. I think we're probably about 90% of the way there, but this last 10% is a little bit more challenging. But I feel like the space that you're in, there's so much benefit if people just kind of, rather than saying, oh no, this is, you gotta continue to do the same thing. You don't really know until you start asking the questions and understand the why of like what you're talking about, and you bring up some really valid points. What kind of customers, Chris, are reaching out to you now? Like, do you think that it's kind of more benefit for like a small independent restaurant? Do you feel like it's kind of more schools? Like, who are some of the audience out there that you think could benefit from this the most?
Well, as far as the audience goes, I'll say that like, it doesn't have to be ones and zeros. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can do a hybrid kitchen. So like you can hire me to come into your kitchen and I'll, look over the menu, watch how service goes, see what pieces of equipment are being used, and figure out where are the biggest, if we could only change one or two things, where will be the biggest dramatic changes? And then you can have a hybrid kitchen that actually benefits you greatly, and not only in the short term, but the long term as well. But I'm speaking to, I've talked to universities, I've talked to small restaurants, I've talked to, big companies, like Microsoft that we talked about. But I'm finding that a lot of people are just curious, like I have a meeting on Friday with Turbo Chef. I'm hoping that we can collaborate on some things. So like there's a lot of different people out there who are interested, who want to learn more, but there is that stigma out there about, am I going to be alienating other people? You brought up a great point with Ford. On my podcast, Sustainable Overload, we just talked about how Harley Davidson is actually announcing that they're going to be doing, that they said, their CEO went on TV and said, electrification is an inevitability. And we want to, we're here to provide products and services. So if that's what our customers want, we're going to give it to them. So, and their stock is up 20% this year alone. So that's a big deal. And you talked about your own restaurant, and I want to applaud you for the solar, for the way you've handled the creation of that restaurant. And I will also posit that you can even get more out of it if you get the right hood system that can actually work with your geothermal system. So instead of grabbing all that heat and steam and kicking it out of the kitchen, you can actually use it to warm your building. So even your cooking waste, the steam, the heat from cooking can help warm your building, making your restaurant that much more sustainable, that much more efficient. And as chefs, efficiency is what we do. We come in, we look for how can we make the service as efficient as possible, produce as much as possible with as little as possible, right? We're always given, less to work with, and we have to be as efficient as possible. So now there's people, these companies coming out and saying, here are technologies that can help you make your kitchen even more efficient, increasing production, but there's still that emotional attachment to gas that we have to.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that despite as much as the industry is always trying to be more efficient and trying to be more productive and looking for these ways, I also think it's a very stubborn industry. I think that the hospitality, food and beverage is it's so labor intensive. And, a lot of people, that's one of the things we've been talking about, on other shows is instead of just kind of getting mad at the labor market, it's kind of hey, take a look at your product. How can you create more aggressive recruiting that has a more competitive compensation and other benefits, instead of just be well, this is happening. I mean, yes, there's a lot of issues that are out there and everything, but people really got to kind of look at their kitchens and the way that they design things. And that's why I love having conversations with people like you, because I'll walk away from a podcast that we're doing and trying to share with our audience But I'll guarantee you, I'll go back to roots and I'm going to ask the question. I'm probably going to follow up with you afterwards and say,
Sure.
hey, tell me about this whole HVAC concept, because these are the things that in a restaurant industry that where the margin of profit is pennies on a dollar.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like every time you want to buy a new piece of equipment, you really got to think about how many steaks do I have to sell or
Right.
sandwiches do I have to sell that I have enough profit to pay for that new cooler.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, most restaurants only have 5%.
Yeah, right, exactly. Which is crazy. Like it's like the last
They
industry.
don't realize that.
Yeah, but I mean, and I think that some of the things you're talking about, particularly at the beginning of the conversation about the output of the energy, a lot of times when somebody's making an expenditure, rather than looking at that first initial price tag, is looking at some other things like the return on that over the period of time. Not to mention these kind of auxiliary things that I never really was thinking about, which is like, hey, to be able to market to your kitchen and say, hey, this is a safer kitchen. And if somebody that has asthma or, I'm not saying that even for us, it's not realistic to go and turn around and say, hey, we're going to start smoking brisket with electric, or we're going to stop using gas ovens. But it's a process, and and unless you really peel back the orange and understand, you really can't make informative decisions on it.
100%. I'll also say that how many times have we gone into a kitchen and we've seen people grab a pot and not realize that it was hot just because of pots are getting hot just because it's on fire? How many times we walked into a kitchen and you have pans that are all warped and black underneath? How many times we walked into a kitchen and they have the cheapest of equipment that's just jerry-rigged because the owner doesn't want to spend the money? Those are things that like doesn't have to be a reality. And it's all too familiar for most chefs out there that they're used to working on crap equipment. They're used to working in dangerous conditions. They're used to just having a deal. When if you were to invest ahead of time, you can benefit greatly over time. Not only you, but your staff as well.
Yeah, and I think that for us, stepping back and looking at even the utilization of the brisket fat, where we look at something we're like, we were throwing 100% of this into the trash, basically. I mean, you try to get it hauled away, but it's like, it's basically kind of just asking different questions that you're able to kind of now get something that is profitable. I have one question though. I see, we're on a lot of different social media platforms. TikTok is another one. And one of the things I see on TikTok, there's lots of different videos, but one of them I saw was somebody kind of like plugging in a Tesla car, and then it kind of then went to show the origin of that energy actually traced back to like a power plant or something that was gas anyway. So it challenges one to kind of ask the question. And again, it doesn't undermine the initiative. It's just kind of makes you want to ask the question of like, so what does it take to like, how do you make an impact on the environment and be able to say, hey, we're going to roll out electrification. But then where do you see in your mind's eye the best way to capture that energy, and then you deliver it to all the different equipment and stuff like that? Because if the origin of it is kind of gas or coal or whatever, and I mean, I've spent years in West Virginia working at the Greenbrier. I'm not anti-coal. I'm just asking these questions because,
I agree.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And I'm going to say that that's absolutely right. I mean, electrical grids use coal and natural gas and nuclear and different things to power themselves. I would say that they're far more efficient in how to use that, those thermal sources than we are in a kitchen or a car is using gas.
Mm-hmm.
If you fill up your gas tank, you're going to go 400 miles. If you were to use that same amount of energy at a power plant, you could probably power 10 homes, right? So they know how to use the energy.
So why I'm trying to understand. So why is that? You're saying that the delivery of it from a power plant is it's more efficient as opposed to trying to distribute that?
It's far more efficient the way that they use the energy. Now, I will say that it's incredibly important that they diversify and use renewable sources, right? So like you're talking about, you use, leftover beef fat to make soap. That's something that was essentially you were throwing away, that was going to essentially free product right there. You paid for it, of course, but like it was going to be cost of doing business, and now you're using it. Solar, wind, water, these are renewable sources that are here already. Why wouldn't you want to use it to your benefit? It's free. Just take advantage of it. And if you don't, you run into problems like they did in Texas, where they refused to diversify their grid and they got into some trouble, right? I mean, Dan Woodfin, specifically from ERCOT, which is their governing body that runs their grid, he said that the wind power, which was what they were specifically saying was a failure, produced 11 to 15% of their energy. It was only projected to create 5%. So if they had diversified and went towards more wind and solar, they would have been just fine. But they doubled down on gas, and then they went so far as to pass laws to ban people from even having the discussion of electrification, because there was already some cities that were passing ordinances allowing for gas bans. So they stopped that. So to go back to the energy grid, that they know how to use the energy better. And as a consumer, if you tell them we want our energy cleaner, they're going to listen. They want money. They're a business like everybody else. So, that's pretty much it. Like,
do you think though that like if you were to try to go to like a school or a hospital or something, and they said, hey, look, we're getting ready to redesign all of our kitchens, would you simply just say that for a restaurant or a country club, again, school, what have you, if they're saying, hey, look, we're getting ready to design something brand new, do you think that you advise most people to just simply say, look and consider electric equipment integrated into your kitchen design? Or do you think that also in some way to have some kind of solar panel, or are there other aspects of your sustainability design that go beyond just saying, look, electric, if you're going to get a combi oven, get one that is electric. If you're going to get induction, all this. Are there other aspects that you think for somebody designing a kitchen that they could be looking at?
Oh, for sure. I mean, like we have innovated and created so much in the kitchen. The only thing that hasn't been looked at is kitchen design. So there's so much out there that we can be doing, even creating composting programs where you can compost, give it to a local composter, and then they redistribute that compost to local farmers. You can be looking at more economic fryers that use less oil, and then use that oil to create biofuel for the farms to then power their equipment to make to grow the canola that will make your oil. Like, there's a lot you can be doing, buying local grain and supporting local farmers. When I was running my kitchens, I always looked at it like a bullseye, right? The more you did and supported of the bullseye, the dead center, on that dartboard, you keep a lot of the money into your local economy. So you're helping everybody in your local economy just from what you're purchasing. You're keeping all your money tight right there. But there's a lot you can be doing. There's a lot of, I have a lot of ideas for storage, how to revolutionize storage. That's the one thing that every kitchen I walk into, they say, I want more storage. There's a lot of things you can do with, how to use your trash, how to use your kitchen waste. If you're peeling a case of carrots, keep the carrots, grind them up, pickle them, make a carrot relish. It'd be really good on like a lamb or something like that. There's things that you can do. Believe it or not, shredded pickled pineapple core is delicious. That's something we always threw away, but we utilized it. We used to do infused waters, then we started pickling them. There's a lot of things you can do to create a more sustainable kitchen that isn't going to take a lot of work, and that can start from the design process all the way to the actual production of the place. So when my company walks in, we offer a full suite of kitchen design, not just how to create a more sustainable kitchen with the technology, but also to create a more sustainable chef, to create a more sustainable kitchen brigade that can run that kitchen successfully. Because I'm not looking to just build a kitchen. I'm looking to make that kitchen a success for years and decades to come.
Yeah, kind of looking at the entire ecosystem. We just installed a Nordac water filtration system, and one of the big reasons was it'd be like a lot of days I'm getting ready to leave the lab and I'm walking around. I'm like, good Lord, look at all these like half drank water bottles. And, I really starting to feel kind of bad. I mean, also as like a business owner, I mean, you look at like every penny, you're kind of like, hey, buying water every day and, not drinking it. And people come in and they come in and we're doing a presentation for somebody. And what do? We get everybody, here's a water bottle. Well, open it, they take a drink, they don't finish it. And, every day, and you think about how many places across the country or even in your county or your state, I mean, just copious amounts of waste. And, one decision to basically just say, hey, let's get water filtration system. We're going to upgrade and enhance our water service when somebody comes in. Also for the employees, for the team members, that if you want, you can get still or sparkling. We have this really nice glass with a beautiful sealed cap that, a capper. And we kind of like, you kill two birds with one stone by improving the product, but also kind of diminishing a lot of the waste. So I think when you kind of mention about coming in and looking at the entire supply chain and not just the electric, I mean, naturally that was kind of our starting point.
Yeah, of course.
But I agree. I think there's a whole lot more opportunity there.
Chris, you were talking that some of the stuff, whenever you start working with a new client, you try to walk into their business kitchen or whatever it's going to be and try to tell them how to be a little bit more sustainable. We were in a couple of episodes back, we were talking about sustainability. And one of my kind of like question all the time is about what you were mentioning, that you can peel carrots, you can peel pineapples and everything, and you can work it out somehow so to lower the waste and improve the food and the quality and everything that you're going to have. So you're becoming more sustainable. How can you put that, in your opinion, how can you put that mindset into a team that is already working, that they peel something, they trash it, they don't do compost? I mean, we know that US is not really big on recycling, and it's about becoming sustainable. Is all about it. It's like what you said, like you can build up a compost zone outside of the restaurant if you have the space. But whenever you start producing more, like let's say pickling pineapple or pickling whatever you want, and then you can, I don't know, instead of like trashing the potatoes, if you're peeling them, you can fry them and offering them as a either gift or souvenir or just to eat it for people. But how can you put that in the people's mind that they are already like old school working, that, oh no, this is trash. How can you eat this, or how can you do that?
That a lot of times the best way to get the attention of a chef or a restaurateur is to just say, this will make you money. So, talking about potatoes or parsnips, you say, instead of throwing that out, why don't you really try to wow your guest, fry that off, create these little chips, have it at the bar, give it out instead of like giving bread out, giving these parsnip chips out that are, one, healthier, two, you can tell a story with and say, hey, this actually came from right down the road, at Chris's farm in Miami, he grew some parsnips, and then he's, whatever. Like, you can sell that story, which will get people more excited and then give people a better understanding of what you're about. And as far as the kitchen goes, there's a lot of times that the chefs who are just like, no, it's just trash, whatever, they're burnt out or they just don't have interest because no one's really given them that ability. So when you have a commis who's just peeling carrots or peeling parsnips or peeling potatoes and just throwing it away, if you say, hey, I'm going to challenge you to come up with a couple of cool ideas that we can do, and it's going to go on the menu, they get fired up. They want to do it. It's all about, relighting that pilot light, if you will, to get these chefs interested in thinking. And then once they see, oh, there's things that were just trash, what can we do to that? They start benefiting your restaurant more. And like, I can't tell you how many chefs I talked to that I said, you want to know where your money is going? Look in the trash. And they see, they just don't look in the trash. That's a lot of where your money is going. You can save money. And that's the name of the game, really, is how to maximize those profit margins. And, those are things that I've done, that I've talked to, that has worked in my own kitchens. I challenge my staff every day. What are you throwing out, and what can you use? And we started coming up with some weird things that even the students liked on campus. And students are notoriously not interested in trying new things. But when you say, oh, that's an infused water using basil and tomatoes that were grown here on the farm, they go, tomato basil water, I'll try it. And they love it.
Right.
I totally agree that to get the attention of like especially a small restaurant owner,
Right.
is that this will save you money. I think that as much as it's good for the environment and all these things, I feel like that is really like huge. I mean, and for whatever reason, I mean, it just is, because it's just such an expensive industry.
Right.
But I mean, I do think that you have to, looking at it through the lens of like a small business owner. I know whenever I was like, when I lived in Columbus and I just had my restaurant there, I mean, it was like, oh my God, like I was looking at everything that was going into the trash and trying to be able to do everything that I could. And I think the challenge is sometimes the cost of doing something with a piece of waste may be more expensive than just throwing it away. Now, not in all cases,
Right.
but in some cases. But if you can do something like what you're talking about, where there's a value add, where if you're adding strawberry stems to vinegar to infuse vinegar, you've now added value to that vinegar, and it's not terribly expensive.
Right.
So I think that to be able to get to like a small business owner, you've got to do things that are easy for them to absorb into their operation.
Right.
That leads me to a question I had for you, Chris, is like, I've seen a couple things like over the years at different shows where there were like things that maybe used bacteria to kind of clean grease, or I've seen different chemicals. Do you kind of look at any of that stuff, that you think that there's good chemicals out there that are natural that can kind of help in the aid of cleaning? Or are there things like composting, any things that are like a composter that is kind of a little more industrial, that I'm not going to have like a big, pile of compost, we're in kind of a little bit of a rural area in Virginia wine country. And I'm mindful of, flies or pests or anything like that.
Yep.
So I love the idea of it, the concept of it. But for somebody that might be in a situation like that, or frankly, at a country club right up on the golf course, I mean, are there any interesting products out there? Anything that you've seen that are like that?
Yeah, 100%. So to talk about composting, the last kitchen I ran for the last 6 years was on a farm, right? And so we had to be mindful, like, oh, there's bears out here. We can't just have meat in the compost bin outside, so like we have to get
right. Yeah.
So there are composters out there that will actually dehydrate your compost. And what do we call those? Like the commercial composters, they also love receiving free brown material. So if you're breaking down boxes, give it to them. They use that, like they need that to compost. So using your recyclables actually for composting is a really good idea. But there's also those dehydrators that will reduce the size of your compost. So say a dumpster full of compost can be reduced down to like a couple of garbage bags full. And then you don't have to worry about pests or smells or anything like that. And then they could just take it and use it for their commercial or the farmer can take it and use it as as compost.
So Chris, are you saying that they have those for like really large ones? Because I don't know if you've seen Vitamix has the food cycler, which is this little tabletop dehydrator that you can put like some stems and fish bones, anything, and it'll just kind of churn it up and make it into like a mulch.
Yeah.
But do they have those like more on a larger commercial?
Yeah, I was actually working with our sustainability director for Chatham before I left, before the pandemic really, to bring something like that to the campus. So we can reduce our, like, instead of having three bins, one for recycling, one for landfill, one for compost, completely eliminating one and just using the dehydrators, which would would create a smaller footprint for our waste program, and then the commercial composter that we use that was local would be able to just pick it up relatively easily. So there are large and small versions of that, absolutely. So if you were a large commercial property, I would definitely recommend looking into that.
Awesome.
Yeah, as far as chemicals go, we actually had to be very cognizant of what we used. We couldn't use bleach and stuff like that because we also cleaned our own water on site. So we couldn't dump chemicals into down the drain that could harm the microbiome that we have created to help clean the water. So there are chemicals that we bought through using Ecolab or whatnot that were 100% biodegradable and things like that we use to clean the kitchens with, including degreasers that were biodegradable.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have actually, as you mentioned that, I know with Roots, whenever we first got open there, we actually have the system as well underwater, and it was 1,000 gallons a day that it was able to process. And it was the same thing. We had to be very conscious, which, for me, I didn't fully understand the system until I got very intimate with, working with it day in and day out, that you can't just pour anything down there because it can compromise the whole system and everything.
And it really keeps you aware of how much water you're using. I wonder how many chefs out there actually know how much energy or how much water they're actually using at a day-to-day basis.
Right. Interesting. All really good stuff. And I know we're getting pretty close here. Chris, sorry.
Talk all day about this.
Chris, about just going back to the electric kitchen and electrification, about an own electric kitchen. I was looking at the University Eden Hall. I don't know if I pronounced it right.
No, you didn't.
And I was looking at it looks beautiful. It looks amazing. The design and everything is super clean. It's super spacious and everything. But the thing that took my attention, what we were talking at the beginning, is full of solar panels. Meaning that was a huge investment. And that's why I was I don't know if you can reveal numbers or anything like that. But just to have an idea, because, for example, not too long ago, I would say a month ago, I was trying to look how much it's going to be to make the house 100% electric and getting the resources from the solar panels. Right. Because, Florida, you were in Florida, you lived in Florida, and you know that pretty much, 365 days of the year, we have sun. Yeah. It's and right now, I don't know why it's so hot again, but it's something that I was looking at it, and we know that after the life that they have is 25 to 30 years, the solar panels. Right. So what would you say? Probably in California, they're way ahead, and I was reading a couple of recycling different processes that they're trying to do with the solar panels, because the amount of trash that you're gonna find in in 10 or 20 years, because right now everyone is trying to be sustainable, but at the same time there's many people out there that they don't know that solar panels, they have their lifetime, and it's not forever, and it's about 25 to 30 years. So what do you think that is gonna happen in 25 to 30 years ahead now? How do you think that these big companies and everyone is going to try to handle that amount of trash? And just thinking about to make the house 100% electric, the investment is not low. It's actually pretty high. And I literally divide it in 25 years, and it gives you a monthly amount that is pretty similar to what we are spending right now in we're spending in electric and gas, but just to become sustainable. Do you think that this is something that we should totally try to do it, or we should wait a couple more years? And here in Florida, we have that too, that the state, they give you kind of a tax back or tax break, and they give you money back, and they give you up to $8,000 depending what kind of a product you're buying and how sustainable you are moving into the future.
Yeah. So solar panels are a really good one. So solar panels, most people don't know this, only convert about 30% of the sun's energy into power. So they're getting better and better. But I'm an eternal I'm an eternal optimist. And I also believe that there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there. So I know that as these panels start to degrade, there's going to be a lot of people out there looking to purchase these defunct solar panels and repurpose them or kind of refurbish them, if you will, with newer solar technology. So that's what I think is going to happen about 25, 30 years. Technology is going to be so much better in the solar department that we'll be able to swap out these photovoltaic cells to be able to just refurbish them, making it more affordable. That being said, I also know that solar panels are becoming more and more prevalent. So as technology is more and more abundant, prices go down. And yeah, you may say like, the price of solar, it would eventually be the same, not a big deal. But think of it like this. Imagine your neighborhood, right? Imagine if 75% of your neighbors went to solar. What happens to the houses that didn't have solar, right? So, in Florida, it's way too much sun. So the way that the grid system works is that if you have solar panels, you're not off the grid. You're on the grid no matter what. So you sell your power back to the grid. So your account now is on credit. And if you don't use all that power, what happens to it? And basic supply and demand economics explains that if you have too much of a supply, the cost goes down. So now those neighbors that couldn't afford the solar panels, they now have cheaper energy because you had too much energy. So it's not about sustainability as to say like, look, I have solar. I may be paying the same, but I'm helping you bring down your costs. So your choices are helping the people around you. And that's what sustainability is all about. It's about giving back as much as you take from the earth.
Right. I totally agree with that. I like that.
You also had one other point that you mentioned was like data logging with tracking some of the energy usage with like gas versus electric. This is another thing that I think a lot of chefs out there that are designing kitchens that they don't really probably think about as far as like, okay, I'm costing out a recipe and here's what it costs for the labor. Here's what it costs for the ingredients. Here's some of your other auxiliary costs. And they don't really, there's depreciation of your equipment and all this stuff. It's kind of there somewhere, but there's a cost associated with producing anything.
Right.
And, do you feel like is there some of the equipment out there, or is there a way that you can kind of do any kind of data logging with comparing like this equipment versus that?
Right. So let's compare equipment. Okay. So talk about those ranges I was telling you about earlier. Those ranges, not the range, the HVAC system. Those HVAC systems cost 3 times more than a traditional HVAC system. They cost me 3 times more than a traditional system. And that was probably my favorite part of the kitchen, actually. Because that number scares people away. They go, well, I'm not going to spend that much. But when I say that we were projected to pay it off in 14 months through energy efficiency alone, because that system was sensing when to turn itself on, when to turn itself off, based on what the internal ductwork was, based on what our surface, like our cooked surface temperature was, it can figure that out. And you can change it in real time and see all the data in real time. I can tell you what my internal ductwork temperature was at any given moment, how much CFMs it was pushing out, all that stuff. But in reality, what it actually did was we paid it off in 9 months because of how we ran our kitchen. We ran it as efficiently as we could. My hood system never, ever passed 60% efficiency. It was always in the 80s to 90s. So I was only using 10 to 20, at most 40% of the energy it would normally use. Because as you know, when the first chef comes in, they turn on the hood system. It stays on all day long. So it's at 100% running all day long when it doesn't have to be that way. So that's right there. Like comparing equipment, the price tag always scares people, but it's the ROI, the return on investment that you really need to pay attention to, because that's what's going to make you a ton of money or save you a ton of money in the future. Let's go to induction ranges. Induction ranges are on average 90% efficient. When your absolute best top of the line range, gas range, is going to be 50% efficient. So what that means is that for every dollar you're spending to use gas, you're throwing 50 cents away. And that's not just going away. That's going into your kitchen, making your staff more uncomfortable, making it really hard to sell those chef's tables because now your guests who are coming into the kitchen are uncomfortable. But when you take that away, now you have better guest facing interactions. You're able to sell those chef's tables. You're able to have a more comfortable kitchen environment. And it saves you a ton of money in the process. And that just goes piece of equipment after piece of equipment after piece of equipment. And these equipment are built to be one-to-one swaps. So there's not, oh, this is too big or too small. They're meant to be, you could easily swap them out. So long as you can run that electrical load, you're fine. So there's so much to be talked about. And I can go into the data as far as kitchen contamination, as far as carbon monoxide goes, like the outdoor air concentration. If it exceeds 9 parts per million, everything's stopped. Everyone goes inside till they find the source of the contamination. But realistically, it stays between 0.3 parts per million or to 2.5 parts per million. Inside a professional kitchen, it far exceeds 200 parts per million. And that's the contamination I'm talking about. It's incredibly detrimental to your health.
Another thing is also when you look at like ovens, we use the Combotherm smart ovens, and they also Uenox. There's a lot of different ones that are out there. But what I love about those ovens, even though they're more expensive, is that they're turned off like when they're not in use. And whenever you need to run a program, you click the button and it says preheating. It actually will preheat past the target temperature, anticipating that you're going to open the door, put something in, close it, and then it starts the cycle. But even that, as you're kind of mentioning, if you just have an oven just running all day, blaring 350 degrees all day long, whether it's cooking or not, and then meanwhile you have AC turned on and return air, and it's just it really. I just think there's so much more thought that can go into the design and efficiencies, and I think you bring up a lot of really good points.
It really paints a picture as to how we actually run our lives. I mean, people a lot of times are like you said, they push back against electrification. But if they really stop to think and look around, what are we talking about? 3-4 pieces of equipment? Everything else in the kitchen is electric. I've never seen a gas-powered RoboCoupe, right? Mm-hmm. Like everything is electric already. It's all about why not just a couple more pieces? Like, what's that going to hurt? If anything, it's going to make it better. And I would also say that there's so much more to this conversation that we can talk for another 2 or 3 hours. I can share with you data after data of real scientific proof of the thermal comfort, of the cost benefit analysis, of whether or not pacemakers are okay in the kitchen around induction, things like that. There's so much more to be talked about that we just don't have the time for.
Well, we'd love to be able to have you back. Maybe Chris and I had talked about potentially doing a Facebook Live, open it up to our Rosendale Online members, and maybe for some of them that might be designing kitchens, might have some questions for you.
Absolutely.
So we'd love to be able to have you back for that.
And I'd love to have you guys on the show as well. On to Sustainable Overload. I'd like to showcase to our audience the amazing, cool stuff you guys are doing. Chef, I've been following your career for a long time, ever since I was an apprentice, and man, it's a lot of fun to watch you. It's so cool.
Well, thank you. Well, we've it's been a journey for everybody, and I feel for me like what's kind of kept it going and exciting is trying to share the journey with as many people as we can, and it really kind of ends up being everybody's journey. And we learn a lot too. I mean, people are like, why do the podcast and why do this? Like, people don't understand. It's like, this is the way that you just continuously grow and get better. You don't get better by just sitting still and keeping your head down and not growing. And, talking with you, it kind of opens up our minds. It doesn't mean that everybody has to embrace and agree with every new piece of content that they're faced with. But if you don't know, then how can you really make better decisions in the future? And I'm not naive to think that everything that we've done has always been the best decisions, but this is how you get better, is you bring other ideas into the conversation, and that's how everybody evolves. So, Chris, where can people find out more about you? Maybe your social media or website, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us.
Sure. So you can find me at forwarddiningsolutions.com and on Instagram at Forward Dining Solutions LLC, Twitter on Dining Forward, and I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, where I'll be posting articles, posting what's new and things like that. But yeah, those are the majority of places you'll find me. Also subscribe to Sustainable Overload, where you can hear me weekly, talk about what's going on in the news, bring on the movers and shakers in the world of sustainability. We just had Christina Garcia of the Building Electrification Institute on. We had a great conversation about diversity, inclusion, and what sustainability really is on the ground floor. So yeah, so check that stuff out. There's a lot of cool things in the works. Hopefully I'm going to be speaking at the Green Build Conference in San Diego this September, and at the Net Zero Energy Conference also a couple weeks earlier. And I'm also partnering with FIPS on a cooking class. So there's a lot of ways you can see what I'm doing.
Awesome.
And, we're only going to be going up from here. This is only the beginning.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we wish you continued success, and we'll definitely stay in touch with you and look for more opportunities to collaborate. So
Yes, Chef.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Oh, and good luck on Chile. Good luck with Chile, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I saw them play Uruguay, so good luck.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Take care.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.